Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and today I have a super panel doing a show on Deep Purple. Now, the premise of this show is Mark II, best song, worst song. So I'll go around the panel as I see it. The wonderful Peter Jones from the Contrarians. Hello, my friend.
Oh, nice to see
Mar
everybody.
Martin Popoff. Hello, my friend.
Yep. How you
And
doing? Bored of this?
Deep Purple aficionado Reed Little. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for the invite, Peter.
Fantastic. So we're going to cover each of the Deep Purple Mark II albums. So I'll go to you, Pete. Best song, worst song. First album we're going to cover is Deep Purple in Rock.
All right. Great topic. Now, it's not fair to start on maybe the hardest record of the lot. But my first choice has always been my first choice, and it's probably my favorite Deep Purple of all time. So my favorite on this is Hard Lovin' Man. I think this is the just quintessential Mark II song. It's got every element, every part of the band that I love, from the guitar playing to the keyboard playing, the driving drums, the chunky guitar. Gillan's voice is insane. It just defines everything for me. So it's always been Hard Lovin' Man. So that part was easy. Picking a worst or least favorite, as I'll choose to think of it in this way, was more difficult. In this case, I'm going to go with Into the Fire. Only because I feel like there are other songs that I prefer and are a little more complete, or maybe have a solo that I like better, or a feel or a groove. But we are splitting proverbial hairs here. Hard Lovin' Man is my favorite. Into the Fire is my least favorite choice on In Rock.
Sweet.
Outstanding start to the show, Pete, as always. Thank you very much. Martin, In Rock.
Okay. All right. So for best track, I'm going to go with Bloodsucker. I think it's the heaviest, most evil, just the gnarliest riff on here. I mean, Speed King is cool too. Hard Lovin' Man came close for its historical qualities as a proto thrash, as a proto gallop, proto power metal kind of song as well. But yeah, Bloodsucker. I love that the grinding vocal on it as well, and just the Diablo Sin Musica tritone kind of riff that you get on that song as well. So I mean, it had some competition with Speed King mostly, and Hard Lovin' Man, I suppose. And worst track is a pretty notorious answer here. I mean, everybody's kind of expects this from me, but it's Child in Time. It's too long. It doesn't belong here. It's a ballad. Not much happens. I don't care about any Ian Gillan vocal acrobatics that everybody's on about all the time. It's a nick of a riff from It's a Beautiful Day, right? Bombay Calling. And it just doesn't fit. And it's just way too long. And on an album that is so landmark, wall to wall heavy metal. It's like, just complete the deal. Just sign off and give us one more heavy song, and then this album would be even that much more legendary. But it's just so out of place, and I just don't care. It's a ballad.
And that's, folks, why we have Martin on the show.
Yeah.
Well done. Reed Little, best song, worst song.
Okay, so just a tiny little bit of background. I only seriously got into Deep Purple about 12 years ago, and I came to them through a very circuitous path. It was first Black Sabbath with Dio, then Rainbow with Joe Lynn Turner, then Rainbow with Dio, Black Sabbath with Ian Gillan, and then finally Deep Purple after all of that. And as I was going through this exercise, I had to fight against sometimes picking the obvious songs, because if you're going to be a cool commentator, you have to pick deep tracks, right? But no, screw that. Speed King is my favorite song on this album. And it's because, now, if someone held a gun to my head and said, pick a favorite band or die, Black Sabbath is probably it. But if you listen to the first track on Black Sabbath, as they spontaneously and accidentally invent at least 3 separate genres, and then compare it to how Speed King starts, it's remarkable, the yin and yang of those things. Black Sabbath is slow and powerful, and I mean, people call it doomy, but there was no doom at the time, right? Until Black Sabbath. Whereas Speed King is bright and energetic and full of life, and it's just exactly what it says on the tin. And I will also say, there have been way too many reissues, remixes, anniversary, box sets, whatever, of Deep Purple. I don't know what issue I have. I mean, with which album I bought. I bought one that starts with a long Ritchie Blackmore guitar solo, and it could not be more different than the way Tony starts Black Sabbath. And the fact that those two bands are lumped into the same genre is always kind of fascinating to me, because they could not possibly be more different. But anyway, Speed King. Also, I love the fact that the Speed King is the vocalist, not the guitarist. Ian makes that pretty clear in his vocals. You know, the vocals, reliving the 50s and 60s vocal pastiches. I don't know. Whatever. It's a great song. My least favorite song, though, I'm going to piggyback with Martin, and it's Child in Time. And I'm okay with the concept of it being a ballad, but it bores the crap out of me. Yes, Ian screams. That's fun, I guess. There's an instrumental breakdown about 2 minutes in that's quite good. It lasts for a minute and a half of a 10-minute song. This is a song that was written for stoners to get high and just listen to in their headphones, like listening to a side of a Yes album. It's a song intended for people to jam in concerts endlessly, so Richie and John can just solo back and forth, which they do. And for all of that, I find it boring and often just skip it.
Right. Well, that's not too controversial, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to pick Speed King. So I think this just pops out of the speaker. I think Deep Purple do the greatest opening tracks. Every single first song on their albums is just an absolute cracker. Whether it's Mark II, 3, 4, 5, it's always outstanding. You hear that first strum of the chord, Richie doing his Jimi Hendrix runs up the fretboard, Pacey doing these rapid fire drums, and then it goes quiet and you hear Lordy's keyboards, and then pow, it goes into Ian Gillan, and it's just a high velocity song. It really focuses and showcases the virtuosity of this band, and I think it's one of Deep Purple's finest albums. In fact, it's one of my favorite Deep Purple songs of all time. I think it's outstanding. This is a landmark album, influenced hard rock, heavy metal, and this song is just an absolute cracker. I'm going to go worst song is Living Wreck. Unlike Pete, I think the difference between best song and worst song is like that. It's just like decimal points. The reason why I don't gravitate to Living Wreck is it's like if it was an iPad or an iPod, I'd probably listen to that the least. It's probably not as musically interesting or on a broader palette than the other songs, but I don't mean it's not a bad song, but it's one out of a really great album that I probably go to the least. But anyway, there you have it, Living Wreck. But in rock, best song, worst song, it's almost a perfect album, and it's very hard. It's like, fractions to, really rate it. All right, Peter Jones, we go to the next Mark II album, Fireball in 1971. What's your best song and worst song?
Okay, best song is just going to echo what you just said about openers. A little air conditioner or power unit firing up, and then Ian Pace goes nuts. And it literally introduces a style of playing that literally was just not heard of before. So it's Fireball. This is just a freight train. It's just Richie's chugging. Pacey is perfect on this. Gillan is crazy. I love the soloing on it. Everything is great on this. And talk about influential. Holy smokes, we could do many shows on what this spawned. So Fireball. My least favorite is The Mule, which sounds funny coming from a drummer, but there's no solo in it on the studio version. And for me, it just kind of wastes space compared to the other tracks. Live, different story, because I get Ian's phenomenal drum solos. But The Mule, everything else is a little more fully formed, and I prefer those over The Mule. So,
okay, nice. Thanks, Pete. Martin, in rock.
All right. Well, I was close to picking Fireball as my favorite, but I'm Fireball, right? I'm going with No One Came. I love the buzzy, heavy sort of bass and the syncopated or offbeat sort of feel, whatever you want to call it. Ian Pace just does a great groove with kind of cool grace notes in it. I think the lyrics are clever. So it's just a great heavy metal construction. So it was very close for me with that and Fireball. And I'm going to go with the Mule as well. The Mule I find completely depressing. It sounds like it almost reminds me of Hallelujah back to the the connector track. The connector track is Hallelujah, and the Weird Connector album is the classical album, right? But it almost sounds to me like a Mark I song. I just don't like it. It just kind of puts me in a bad, like a depressing mood sort of thing. So it wasn't really close because maybe a different one's going to come up with one or two of you guys, but it wasn't really close. It was definitely the Mule. So Smooth Dancer. No one came in the Mule.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Reed.
Okay, I think you guys are a lot more positive on Fireball than I am. I found it a huge letdown after In Rock. It's very jammy, which I feel like it was half-baked when they went into the studio, and you can tell that some of the stuff, they're just noodling. And I did, as I was going through this exercise, I had to stop myself from picking the first track on every album. It's like that would be just a little too obvious. So, but after looking at it for a while, I think Demon's Eye is probably my favorite. It's slower, and it's actually much more in line, funnily enough, with a Black Sabbath style track. But it's got that real hook. As a matter of fact, Martin, I was just listening to a podcast of yours the other day on earworms. This song is an earworm for me. That hook just gets stuck in there deep. And for that reason, it's probably my favorite on the album. And I think I've mentioned on other shows before that I have no use whatsoever for the song Anyone's Daughter. I think it's utterly out of place. It's light country. And interestingly, in about 5 years, light country rock would be the biggest musical force in America. But in 1971, is this album 70 or 71?
71.
Anyway, yeah, no one was doing light country rock. And I'm like, why is this country ballad on my Deep Purple album? It's not what I want to hear. And I hate Ian's lyrics. And it's definitely a skipper.
Okay. Well, thank you, Reed. Well, Demon's Eye was actually on the UK version, so I'm going to talk about the US version. And maybe controversially, my favorite song is Strange Kind of Woman. I love this song. I think Deep Purple, out of the holy three of hard rock, Led Zeppelin, Sabbath, you might even throw Heap, had more swing. They had the groove, they had the swing, and it's because of one Mr. I. Pace. He had the groove, and this song is just got so much swing and groove. It was a pop crossover hit. It hit number 6 in the UK pop charts. It's got the smoothest Ian Gillan vocal line. It's so smooth, Pete Jones. I could imagine Elvis singing this. I can imagine, Ian's hero Elvis singing. It's catchy, it's infectious, it's got earworm all over it, and live, this is the song where he does that wonderful counterpoint where Richie does the solo and Ian sings his guitar line back to him. So I think it's a wonderful song. Worst song, The Mule. So I'm sort of replicating what a lot of you folks are saying. Too much flange. It sounds like a psych song from the late 60s. It just goes nowhere. The lyrics are not that interesting. Yeah, I would have preferred if, they put a different song, kept it a little bit tighter, but it's easily the worst song on the album. Yeah, The Mule, or me. All right, the next album, 1972. This is the big blockbuster, folks. This is the biggest selling Deep Purple album. Just look it up. It was a hit everywhere around the world, and it basically comprises, most of the songs on this album is Deep Purple's song set for, how many? 30, 40 years? So, Peter Jones, tough one. What was your best song and worst song off Machine Head?
Well, I bantered back and forth on several, only I think to try and be fair in my own head, which was an exercise in futility because I was just trying to con myself into thinking I was more flexible than I really am. And I said, screw it, it's Highway Star. It'll always be Highway Star. It's, as Hard Loving Man was to me in rock, this is maybe, other than maybe Smoke on the Water, this is essential and quintessential Deep Purple. It's got everything, absolutely everything. The great solos, the unrelenting tempo, and the pushing forward, and also this is by far the most fun to play on drums. Oh my God, I love playing this track. I've done it so many times with bands. This is just everything. The perfect solos, both John and Richie, which is another great thing because both of them are featured in this. And, I love that. And so this one stands out for me. And the fact that they wrote it just off the cuff, didn't sound check that night. And they're like, yeah, put it in the set. And it just becomes this monster. I'm like, that's how it should be. Not too much thought, just be who you are. And this is what comes out. Least favorite, Never Before. The other tracks I just prefer. I don't think Never Before is a bad track. It's just not going to measure up to everything else that's on the record for me. So those are my choices.
Nice. Thank you. Martin.
Okay, there's your machine head there with the whole piece of metal with this thing stamped into it. And then this is a reflection on the smooth part of the metal. That's how they made that thing, right? So yeah, this was no contest for me. My favorite Deep Purple song of all time is Pictures from Home. So it was going to win here. Just such a classy, cool, dark, mysterious, cruising track with that solo in it, with a it's amazing, right? Great drumming too. Highway Star comes close, and so does Space Truckin', mind you. But yeah, it is my favorite Deep Purple track of all time. And I've often also said that this is the best produced Deep Purple Mark II album. It's I even joked in the we just did one of our little Contrarians reliving old reviews thing where I critiqued an old review of this album, right? And in my little snarky entry thing, I said, this is the only album by Deep Purple that even comes close to sounding as good as Look at Yourself from Uriah Heep, right? I mean, the production's really good on this album. And then basically no contest, a little contest. Definitely it's going to be Lazy for me. I've always complained about that song. I don't want to hear a Deep Purple blues song. That's going to be a theme here throughout, actually, for me. But it's long. It's a blues song. I don't care. It's lazy. And Never Before comes close. That's the notorious song where they're trying to write a single. They aren't big fans of that song. I think it's rather pedestrian, but it's over much quicker than Lazy. So I'm happy about that. And incidentally, the cool thing about these early Mark II albums, every one of them has 7 tracks on it. Which is kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Pictures from Home, easy winner. Lazy, easy loser.
Well, you surprised me, Martin, because I would have put money that you would have picked Smoke on the Water. There you go.
No. I would have, as best or worse, I do complain about that song. Yeah, I do.
I would have predicted Pictures of Home for Martin. Is his favorite.
Anyway, surprises today. Fantastic. Reed, what have you got?
So as if to prove the point, so I saw Deep Purple in concert 2 weeks ago, I think it is now. And their tour is inaccurately billed as the 50th anniversary of Smoke on the Water. Not even of Machine Head. It's the 50th anniversary of Smoke on the Water. I looked at that and went, what the? I guess they're just trying to appeal to casual fans. So this was a funny exercise for me because I have to agree with Pete that Highway Star is the best track on the album. Everything about the construction is incredible, but it's not my favorite. My favorite, Space Truckin'. And some of that is because it's so monstrously heavy, that John Lord organ, and some of it is because this is literally the first Deep Purple song I can remember, but it was from when I was too young to know who Deep Purple was, and it was just the song. I tell this story, we used to go skating. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and in the skating rink, they'd be blasting this song through the speakers as I'm skating around, trying to chase down the cute girls at the skating rink. And that chromatic riff, it's so powerful. I love it. And it's just very deep into the nostalgia hooks. So Space Truckin', still my favorite track. And I'm kind of surprised, actually, that Martin did not go with my least favorite track, which is When a Blind Man Cries. To me, When a Blind Man Cries is like the worst parts of Child in Time distilled down into a shorter length. I know Ian Gillan clearly loves that style of song, that maudlin vocal, and I think he's terrible at it. I just don't think it works. I think he is meant to be a much more energetic kind of singer. I don't think the band really nails that material. I actually will disagree with Martin on some of their blues stuff, which is odd for me because I'm on record as not being a blues fan. But I think When a Blind Man Cries just misses on all points for me.
Well, okay, that was actually a bonus track, but we'll let you get away with it this time, Reed. Next time.
Again, I
maybe
have
not.
no idea what, I only have the editions that I have, so I don't know what was on the 1973
Well,
release.
this is your first warning. I'll give you a yellow card, okay? Next time, all right? All right, Machine Head. Best song, Smoke on the Water. It is so simple, it's a work of genius. It's just a chordal progression that everybody knows. It has a guitar solo that conquered America, that is hummable. What makes a guitar solo memorable? You can hum it, you can sing along to it. And I think the lyrics and the arrangements are simply perfect. It tells a story out of an innocuous event that happened in their, when they were at Montreux and the casino burning down. Ian Gillan's songwriting makes it compelling. It makes it a really interesting story. So it's the song that everyone knows, Deep Purple. It's their signature song, and it's for good reason, because I think it's almost a work of genius. It's just so simple, but catchy and infectious. Highway Star was just a fraction behind, and also Space Trucking. Lazy, I agree with Martin. It's just rote blues woogie workout. I used to like it when I was a young kid, with the harmonica and all that sort of. But now I like the other deeper tracks a lot more. So I don't like Lazy as much as the other songs. I think it's a good song, but it's my least favorite of Machine Head. But again, this is a really tough pick because there's such a high quality range of songs on Machine Head. Alrighty, who do we think we are? Pete, best song, worst song?
All right. Well, this one came down to two tracks, of which I spent most of the afternoon playing back to back in repeat to see if I could pick one of these two. And the eventual winner came out as Rat Bat Blue. I love the crazy syncopation on this. Ian Pace is just going crazy. So tight, but it's so unique. It's a different feel than anything that they had kind of done up to that point. The riff is crazy good. Great vocals from Gillan. I love how they change the feel, go off on a double time, and then pull it back, and it sounds even heavier when they recapitulate it at the end and come back into it. It was just a stroke ahead of Mary Long, which I absolutely love as well. But I had to pick one, so Rat Bat Blue. Least favorite was an easy one. It's not because I dislike it, but like with the other records, I clearly prefer the other ones over it. So it was Our Lady. And the others, I think, are just, again, more mature, a little better constructed, a little more put together. And I do appreciate, though, that Our Lady is where it is in the order, the track order, because I think it's in the right spot to end the record. But that's my least favorite. So,
all right, nice, thanks, Pete. Martin.
All right, so there we go. Who do we think we are? With an exclamation point or no exclamation point, and never with a question mark. Kind of weird. My favorite, I'm going to go with Smooth Dancer. I just love the spaces between the chords. Yeah, I just love that. And Mary Long was close. But yeah, Smooth Dancer is just a really cool, straight between the eyes heavy metal track. And my least favorite is Place in Line, another the narrative of the sort of slow blues kind of thing. Not a big fan. Never really was. It was close with Woman from Tokyo. I despise that song as well. And I really don't like Strange Kind of Woman. I always put those two together. I just don't like the chord sequences and the sort of well, the shuffly feel a strange kind of woman, but Woman from Tokyo, I just hate that. I just don't like that at all. So yeah, there you go. Smooth Dancer for a good metal track on here, and Place in Line.
All right, thank you, Martin. Reed.
Okay, well, my favorite track off of Who Do We Think We Are is Woman from Tokyo. So I make no apologies for it. It's a stupid song. It's a simple song. I think they were attempting to recreate Smoke on the Water. Smoke on the Water, other than just that classic riff, is probably best remembered because of the way it layers at the beginning, right? And each thing that comes in is just perfectly placed. And it's that buildup of layers that really makes that a successful song. And I feel like that's what they tried with Woman from Tokyo again, except in a much more, I want to say simplistic fashion, but it's more because it's the second time that they did it. So I think it is kind of an inferior copy of Smoke on the Water, but I think it's fun. I think it's upbeat and it's attention grabbing. And again, it was the other Deep Purple song they played at the skating rink for that 10-year-old kid. And I will always love it for that. We don't have to throw away everything we loved as kids just because we get older, right? On the other hand, my least favorite is Place in Line. Ironically, I think Richie is an amazing blues player. He rarely plays straight blues. There's a lot of blues in his playing, but he rarely plays straight blues. But something about Deep Purple just doing straight blues is unsatisfying. And this one is such a bog standard blues song. Any band could have pulled it off just as successfully. The solo is not particularly Richie feeling. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. Place in Line, my least favorite track.
Okay, thanks, Reed. All right, well, my favorite song is Rat Bat Blue. You've got a classic Blackmore riff that's sharp, nasty, direct. You've got an infectious, pacey drum line, and I love that John Lord solo. He goes Switched on Bark by Wendy Carlos. It just goes ballistic, and I can't work out if it's actually John Lord playing and they've sped up the tape, or it actually is John Lord playing. That's something that I'll have to uncover. Maybe our viewers will let us know. But I really love this song, and Pete nailed it. It's got kind of a bit of a jazz sort of vocal riff to it with Ian Gillan. So I love that song a lot. My least favorite is Mary Long, simply because I think it's a little bit dated. It's the one that I just don't like. I like the least, but that's not to say it's a bad song, but I just prefer the other songs on the album. And that's, with the early Mark II, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't mean it's a bad song. It just means in a collection of really good songs, it's the one I love the least. And I just think that I know it was about a conservative critic who was very much about censorship, Mary Whitehouse, I believe, and I think it's just a little bit dated. And, it's fine that they were picking up on the politics of today, but in 2024 years, it just doesn't really reach out to me as strongly as the other songs. So that's the worst song or least favorite song, Mary Long. All right, Pete, so what happens? Mark II breaks up, Mark III happens, and we know the rest of the story. But 1984, Mark II gets back together and they pull out the album Perfect Strangers. And there's Martin showing it. A lot of heat on that album, the big comeback album. What is your favorite song and least favorite song on Perfect Strangers?
Okay, well, I will say categorically for me, this is a precipitous fall off between Who Do We Think We Are and everything that comes after it. They're far apart timeline-wise, but they're also far apart stylistic-wise. And to me, there's a big drop-off. And also, I will give my love for the Ian Pace shuffle. It's one of his trademarks, and anything where he shuffles or swings, I'm all in favor. But don't think the other two are off or wrong, because their ears tell them what's the truth. So let's get to Perfect Strangers. My favorite track is Nobody's Home. This, not unlike what Martin was saying, is this got this crushing, but with space groove that Ian Pace is just pounding through with this really heavy riff from Richie and these snarly and barky vocals from Gillan. And they got a great unison that is almost reminiscent of their early days. Different flavor, different vibe, but it is the one that reminds me the most of something from the past. And that really attached to me and stuck. My least favorite is Hungry Days. Don't care for the feel. Don't like the sonics of it. I don't like his vocals. So that one was an easy choice for me. So Nobody's Home is my favorite. Hungry Days is my least favorite.
Thanks, Pete. Martin.
All right. Definitely my favorite is Perfect Strangers. Knocking at Your Back Door is close, but Perfect Strangers, I just love that whole, the slight Egypto thing in it. I love the sort of leaden groove of the thing. I like Ian's vocal. The lyrics are pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of good stuff on here. I actually did a Contrarians episode where weirdly, and I'm a little wobbly on it, but I weirdly actually picked this as my favorite Deep Purple album. And I made the point that too many of the rest of them have one or two or three songs that I'm not crazy about. But having gone through it again for this exercise, I think I would probably knock it down a little bit. It is very safe. It's very conservative. It's basically giving you a Machine Head for the 80s kind of thing, right? But it was kind of no contest. I'm just going to go with the slow, dour, boring ballad, Wasted Sunsets. The band even likes it, actually, quite a bit. I mean, Ian thinks it's just some beautiful, emotional thing, but I don't like it. I don't like the negative title, Wasted Sunsets, and all that kind of thing as well. I think even said it's a little bit about drinking a lot, drinking and getting hungover, basically, right? So yeah, just going with the ballad, and I think Perfect Strangers is probably the second most famous song on it, or tied with the first most famous song on it. The rest have kind of faded into the background over the years.
Yeah. So Martin, where do you think it would be pegged in your ranking if it was the top album? 3,
I don't
4?
know. I mean, it would compete with probably Machine Head the most. I think Machine Head and maybe even Perpendicular, maybe even Abandon. I love those first two Steve Morse ones, but those have the unfair advantage of being modern, and everybody's standards get better and better and better. Kind of, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's odd. But every Deep Purple album, I find I love 4/6 of it or 5/7 of it kind of thing. And
Yep.
This one kind of fell out in the math. But yeah, it'd go down a little probably now.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Reed.
Okay, so Perfect Strangers is the first Deep Purple album I heard, being cognizant of the fact that it was Deep Purple. I had a friend in high school that bought every new release that sounded like it would be heavy metal. And he was like, "Hey man, Deep Purple has a new album out." And I was like, "Who is that?" And I was a massive fan of Rainbow's Bent Out of Shape album. So I was devastated to find out that Richie Blackmore had given up Rainbow and gone to do Deep Purple, because I had no loyalty to Deep Purple at that point. That said, my favorite track, also Perfect Strangers. I love it for so many reasons. One, because it is utterly unique in the Deep Purple catalog. There is nothing else like it. There is nothing else that has that structure of it. Those power chords, da-na, da-na-na-na, that is not a Deep Purple type of structure. And what I hear in this song is Richie Blackmore is bringing the very same songwriting he used on Bent Out of Shape, and Ian Gillan is bringing in Black Sabbath, his time in Black Sabbath. And everybody compares it to Led Zeppelin, because there's that breakdown that's kind of Kashmiri, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. But I hear a lot more Black Sabbath in this song than I do Led Zeppelin. Also, there's no traditional guitar solo. Richie plays melodies behind the vocal. That is not his normal structure. So just everything about the song is completely unique, and I think it really works. It stands out for me on the album. Now, oddly, because I am such a massive fan of both John Lord and Richie Blackmore, my least favorite track, and maybe this is a bonus track too, I don't know, I don't care, it's Son of Alaric, the instrumental.
That's
the
definitely
10
a bonus. That's a deep bonus
is it?
track. Yeah.
Oh well, it's on my album.
Yeah. They wouldn't have put
It's
that on the
terrible.
album. Yeah.
Two
No,
strikes,
it's
Ray. Two strikes.
I mean, it's 10 boring minutes. There's about 2 minutes of good music in there. And if they had chopped it up into, say, three-minute songs and interspersed them between other songs the way Blackmore did on Rainbow albums, and I have to say, I think his instrumentals in Rainbow were not very good. As much as I love his Rainbow years, his instrumentals have never been great. But Son of Alaric just is terrible. It's a waste of 10 minutes of my time.
All right. Thank you, Reed. Best song, Perfect Strangers. You gentlemen summed up the instrumental side of it. I'll talk about the lyrical side of it. I think Gillan, when he's on form, is a great observational lyricist. And he's basically just talking about the whole group getting back together. And it's interesting. There was an interview with Roger Glover on Triple M radio when they toured Australia. And he said, the reason why we called the song Perfect Strangers, or the album Perfect Strangers, was that the previous Mark II album was, Who Do We Think We Are? Perfect Strangers. And that was the answer. So I thought it was just a nice little tie-in. It just talks about things, getting back together. And, I just think that instrumentally, it picks up the seed that Richie planted with Rainbow off Rising, with Stargazer, with the Egypto chords, which Martin Sinkley explained. And, Richie, every album or every two albums, loves to explore those Egypto chords and those chordal progressions. And it just perfectly encapsulates it in Perfect Strangers. And wonderful vocal, wonderful, arrangement. And it's part of their song set ever since. Now, the worst song, Hungry Days. Now, Pete and I, we did a show on The Battle Rages On, and we were talking about how Deep Purple do wonderful openers, but they have a tendency to have weak closers. So their closing songs don't seem to be as strong as the openers, and I think this is a case study with Hungry Days. It seems a little bit throwaway. You've got those very dated keyboard sounds, like there's those string stabs. The vocals are all over the shop, and the lyrics are just talking about what was happening in 1969. And Ian Gillan seems to have this obsession of what was happening in 1969 for some reason. There's a few songs about that. But Hungry Days to me sounds not very focused, and it was sort of like, guys, we've got one more track. Let's just lay down something very quickly. And they do a jam, and it's a little bit lazy, and they just press it, and that's it. So it doesn't sound as focused as Perfect Strangers and some of the songs on this album. So that's my least favorite. All right. So the follow-up, I think in 1987, was House of Blue Light. So Peter Jones, best song, worst song.
Yeah, this is a very challenging album. It's extremely low on my full Purple album rankings. I don't care for this much at all. Picking a couple tracks on here, there's a few that stand out, but one in particular for its energy and its drive, and that's Mad Dog. I love the intensity of it. Again, anytime Purple can play that more mid to up tempo driving feel, which I think they excel at, that's when they're in their wheelhouse. And this one sits in that wheelhouse for my listening. I just, like I said, I just think it's a really great riff, and Gillan is doing his best he can with the material that he has. He sounds tired. His voice is in rough shape. And we already know the cracks are already there. One tour and one album in, this was not going to be harmony off into the wasted sunsets, I guess. It just wasn't. So Mad Dog is my favorite track. Least favorite on this is Strange Ways. Just, I could have picked a handful, but this is the one that I always skip. I hear the intro of it and I'm like, no, something different. So that one just doesn't work for me at all.
Okay. And Pete, where does that rank in your overall Deep Purple ranking? Would it be the bottom or pretty close?
It's in the, yeah, as like I said, it's probably in the bottom quarter.
Yeah.
It sits down pretty low.
Yeah. Gotcha. Martin, what do you think of House of Blue Light?
I'm a fair bit of a fan of it. I mean, it's another conservative album. They spent a lot of, it seems like a lot of effort went into it. I mean, they are safe Deep Purple songs, but they're good. They're generally pretty good Deep Purple songs. The band isn't particularly fond of it, and they thought it was hard to make and all that. I'm going to go with Bad Attitude as my favorite. I just love the chord sequence on that. It's got a bunch of cool chord movements in it. It's got a really interesting guitar solo with a real effect on the guitar. It's very Egypto again. I think it's a good quality song. I was close with Mad Dog too. Mad Dog's pretty cool. And worst is pretty easy for me. It's the slow blues about a stripper, Mitzi Dupree. That's just it's going to lose every time kind of thing, because I think basically there's a lot of variety in this album, and there's a fair bit of creativity. You think of Call of the Wild and Unwritten Law. There's some weird stuff on this album, so it's kind of cool that way. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it's pretty wall to wall, mid heavy Deep Purple kind of thing, or leaning to heavy Deep Purple. So there you go. Bad Attitude, the opener, and Mitzi Dupree.
Thanks, Martin. Reed.
Okay, so I will say categorically that this is the worst sounding album that Deep Purple has out. The Ritchie Blackmore's guitar is weird and buzzy and fuzzy. He never uses that tone on any other recording. It's so weird. The organ sounds terrible. Plus, it's got like electric piano and other stuff in it. It sounds awful. Ian Gillan sounds like he's got a real bad head cold while he's singing it. He's singing real high and nasally. Just everything about the sonics of this album is nails on a chalkboard to me. But that said, it has some good songs. I love the song Bad Attitude. And a great opener. I wonder about, Ian Gillan famously he did his lyrics last. So he's writing this song about how his relationship with Ritchie Blackmore is going south. I really wonder if Ritchie would have been okay with letting him record this song if he knew the content of it in advance. But it's a pretty pointed set of lyrics. But that actually gives it some fire, which is missing on a lot of the rest of the album. And I'm ashamed to say I actually kind of like Mitzi Dupree. God, that's a juvenile song. But for me, the worst song on the album is Call of the Wild. And I remember I was in college when this album came out, and we used to listen to Metal Shop, the only show with teeth, on the radio. And they were going to premiere the new Deep Purple song, and they played Call of the Wild. And I just remember looking at my buddies and going, what the hell was that? That is one of the worst songs I have ever heard. And I lay it all at Ian's feet. That whole... Oh, it's just, ugh. I have heard so many drunk people at karaoke bars that sound better than that. That is a terrible song. I hate it. I wish it wasn't on the album, but I do like Bad Attitude. That's a good song.
Thank you, Reed. All right, Bad Attitude. That's my favorite. So that just goes with the theme of Deep Purple opening tracks just being an absolute cracker. It's got a lot of fire and brimstone, and I find there's a lot of Ian Gillan lyrics that are directed at Ritchie. So it's probably the things that he can't say to him in person, he just writes about it. Smooth Dancer, Bad Attitude. It's always, you can sort of read into the interpersonal relations just through the lyrics. Yeah, I love the riffage. I think it's got a lot of grunt to it, but the rest of the album kind of lacks that sort of intensity. The worst song, Call of the Wild. I was like you. They premiered it on the local radio station, Triple M, and I've never been so disappointed. I thought, what the hell is this? Operator, I'm waiting for a girl. I mean, that's not Deep Purple. It's just like AOR. What is it, Journey or something? Look, that just didn't sound like Deep Purple to me. And I don't know, we haven't spoken about the video clip. It's completely naff. They spend the whole video, I don't want to do a video. And they've got all these midgets and misfits, and it's terrible. Martin, they've done some pretty shocking videos, haven't they? Deep Purple are not a video band, are they?
And for the record, I mentioned Call of the Wild, but I was thinking in my head, the verse to Unwritten Law when I said both of those songs. I was trying to cover both bases, but you're right. Now that you sing Call of the Wild and you mention all this, you're right. It's a terrible song.
Yeah, I've got nothing much more to say.
Yeah.
Is it the Call of the Wild?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Battle rages on. Pete, we did a whole episode on this, so best song, worst song.
Well, and but for those who haven't seen the show, I'm unapologetically a huge fan of this record. Even though all the circumstances being what they are, with Gillan coming in almost kind of in the last second, most of everything had already been written with Joe Lynn Turner, and it all hinges on the holy trio of Lord, Pace, and Blackmore. And there's a rejuvenation of intensity and heaviness, and I love the sonics of the instrumental parts of it. They're just heavy and nasty, and so I put that one much higher. So here, the favorite track has always been this track, and for me, it's a twist in the tail. This is just I had mentioned it before. This was such a breath of fresh air to hear them just kind of driving, with such great intensity and purpose. And Pacey is doing some of the best playing he's done in a long time. Great interplay between Blackmore and Lord. I think vocally it's one of the better melodies, and the chorus isn't one of these ear scratchers like we mentioned on the previous record. So that one really stood out, and especially live, that was just incredible. Listen to the version on Hell or High Water. It just really crushes. But as you were saying, Peter, and we were kind of drawing the conclusion, it's no surprise here. The last track is a dog. One Man's Meat is a piece of junk. This has no business being anywhere on an album from a band of this magnitude. Just the title and the lyric content alone is just shameful. There's nothing there to hold on to, and it instantly puts all the other tracks above it just by default. So huge separation. And you were mentioning before we went on air that with the earlier records, at least for me, that the differences between the top and the bottom was much smaller. All the tracks were good. You felt like they all belonged in the same house, maybe a few exceptions from our friends who have pointed out things. But you get to these later records, and for me, the chasm is wide. It is a big extreme between the better tracks and the not so great tracks. And this one really stands out as maybe the widest of the bunch. So twist in the tail and One Man's Meat.
Well said. Thanks, Tate. Martin.
Well, I'll go with The Battle Rages On. I think it's got one of Richie's coolest riffs ever. And then the chords are great during the verse. And then at the end, it's got that whole arrangement where it's
so heavy.
Yeah, so cool. I think it's better than Anya. Anya is a good competitor. So is Twist in the Tail. Anya, they just played it live on this tour, right? But yeah, Battle Rages On is just a cool, epic track. And then for worst track, I was close with Lick It Up and One Man's Meat, which to me are both Gene Simmons bass fart songs. But I went with Ramshackle Man. A typical, again, just I hate those bluesy Gary Glitter rock and roll, type, give me all your love. This weird sort of yangy earworm in a bad way kind of chord sequences, and the fact that it's kind of a bluesy chord sequence as well. And that's why I'm not really a big fan of Demon's Eye either. It's got a little bit of that to me, that it's just a little too close to heavy blues. So yeah, Ramshackle Man, but I could easily gone with One Man's Meat or Lick It Up as well.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Reed.
Okay, so I also am a big fan of this album, especially after the last one. Everything about this album sounds so much better. Or excuse me, I guess Slaves and Masters was actually the one that just preceded it. But it sounds so much better than the House of Blue Light. And as much bad blood as there supposedly is about this album, I always try to remind people, remember, the instrumental parts were recorded when Richie was happy, when he thought Joe Lynn Turner was still in the band. He was writing for Joe Lynn Turner. And when Richie is happy, he writes his best riffs. When Richie is unhappy, he just kind of noodles around on one chord and then improvises his solos and goes home. So he doesn't play rhythm. But on this album, he has some fantastic riffs, some of his best since the Rainbow days, frankly. And The Battle Rages On is a great track. Now, I will say the way that they multi-track Ian's vocals is off-putting. There is no other Deep Purple album that has that multi-tracked vocal. And I wish they did not do that. I don't know why they did it. It's odd. It's out of place. And that actually leads to my least favorite track, which is Solitaire, because the multi-tracked vocal is so obtrusive on that one. It's not that I think the music is bad, but the vocal just, I'm like, can you give me less of that like detuned vocal? It's like John Sykes's guitar. It occupies too much space. Although Ian Gillan doesn't do any vocal wind-ups. Hey, there's something for your thumbnail, Peter. But there is a part of Solitaire that I swear Iron Maiden ripped off for A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, which is nobody's favorite song on Brave New World.
Right.
So listen to that just think about that. If you know the song A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, listen to Solitaire. There's a part of it that has the melody of A Thin Line Between Love and Hate in it. And Deep Purple was there first.
Thank you, Reed. Battle Rages On, it's probably my least favorite Deep Purple album of all time, but maybe a bit controversial. And the thing I can't get my head around is Ian sounds awful. And I think he was in a no-win situation. The record company put heat on Blackmore and co. Ian Gillan's got to come back or you lose the record deal. And it was coming up to that, a monumental anniversary. And basically Gillan had to record a lot of vocal lines that were made for Jolene Turner. So it's like square peg, round hole. So a lot of the songs were meant for Jolene Turner, and Ian does struggle. However, my favorite song, because it sounds so different and it's out of the box, is Solitaire. So I don't mind the vocals. It's got a very dark, elegant melody. John Lord has 2 solos on it. There's not enough John Lord on this album, and he actually has 2 solos, and there's no Richie solo on this song. So it's out of the box. It's something a little bit different. It's slightly got that Egypto or Asian feel about it, and I like it a lot. I think it's not as root as the other songs on this album, Solitaire. Worst song, Jolene Turner's favorite song, One Man's Meat. It's terrible. Gene Simmons, wouldn't even dare write lyrics like this. Well, maybe he would. But anyway, it's shocking. And I haven't really got much more to say. I think Ian's, vocals on this are pretty poor. And it's one of those by the numbers. You can tell when Deep Purple are engaged because there's a little bit, the arrangements just pop out. They sound invested. But in this particular song, they just sound like they're not really invested. And it's sort of a bit of a throwaway track. So One Man's Meat is the worst song. So there you have it, guys. We've done it. So I'm going to do a very quick round the grounds and get you guys on the spot to pick the one favorite Deep Purple song out of the ones that we've just chosen today. So sorry to put you on the spot, but that's what I do. Peter Jones, pick a song.
Hard Loving Man.
Thank you, sir.
Easy.
Martin Popoff.
I'll go Pictures of Home. Favorite Deep Purple song, period.
Fantastic. Reed Little.
Perfect Strangers for me.
And for me, Speaking. Well done, lads. This has been lots of fun. We've covered a band that we really love, Deep Purple, and we've picked the best and the worst. Peter Jones, wonderful to see you. You can check him on the Contrarians. Type in Peter Jones. See a lot of wonderful shows. And he's also on this show as a permanent panelist, and we just do the Deep Purple family. So we're just exploring all the roots and tree trunks of that. Martin Popoff, always wonderful. Quick plug of the book. There we go. Run with the Wolf, Rainbow on Record. Wonderful. Good to have you back on the show. And Reed Little, always good to have you on. There you go. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us what your favorite Deep Purple song is, your least favorite. Maybe you disagree with some of the selections, but we like reading your comments. Cheers, and we will see you soon on another show in 2024. See you
Very
later.
cool.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.